Welcome back to Conversations for the Good. Good morning, Dr. Jane.
Good morning, Anna. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's really good to see you.
Good to be here.
Well, we've talked about awareness as a foundational piece in understanding ourselves, making conscious choices, being in the process of change. Dr. Jane, I would like to talk about mindfulness today. I thought you could explain what it is and why we should be doing it.
Oh, mindfulness. First off, when I talk about mindfulness, I really like to put it out there, right at the front gate that we're talking about an experiential reality. And this means that we can't know it without experiencing it. It's like reading about or talking about riding a bicycle. We can gather information about it, but we really don't know the experience of it until we put our hands on the handlebars, our feet on the pedals, start pedaling, feeling the movement and the balancing of our bodies. So as we have this conversation, what I'd like to do is actually have an actual experience of the mindfulness. So if we can just kind of get settled into a comfortable position where our back is supported and our spine is, allowing us to have a dignified posture, uncrossing our extremities, uncrossing our arms and our legs, and just allowing ourselves to be in this position is always imperative as we start any mindfulness practice, that we bring our awareness. We bring her awareness to this moment. And we do this in mindfulness by bringing our full attention and concentration to the breath. The breath is this lovely moving target. It's always there, and it becomes an anchor point for us to move our concentration in this way and brings us into the moment. And we're really attending to our breath, watching our breath, sensing our breath, just as we find it. We're not changing it. This isn't about take a deep breath. It's just to notice how our breath is functioning in this moment, registering. And by that, I mean kind of noticing the sensory experience of the breath, the experience of the breath, the in-breath, the out-breath, and just feeling the sensations of the air entering the nostrils, the air leaving the nostrils, and especially sensations right around that nose area between the nostrils and the upper lip, and just allowing ourselves to concentrate and notice this, experience this as we continue.
This feels, sorry, I was really into it there. This feels so familiar. I know that, concentrating on the breath slows me down, as you can see, and it lets me turn towards what's happening like right now, not the list and not all that whirling in my head that's going on all the time.
Well, yes. And, Anna, we've included many of these skills in previous conversations, the skills that really are the components of a mindfulness practice. And the mindfulness, that the reason why we want to focus on it is because it heightens and refines our awareness. It offers us a clear recognition into our present moment experience, whatever that is. It might be something that's very pleasant, or it might be a high level reactivity. I'm often hesitant to use the word mindfulness because it's become almost cliche in our culture. Everybody thinks that they know it. But unless you're actually willing to be in the experience of it, you can't know it the way it is intended. To be in the present moment on purpose without any judgment or criticism. And this present moment is where all the important things happen. It's where we experience love, where we experience awe, where we experience loss, where we experience a power greater than ourselves, and where we experience conscious choice. So these are all experienced from that point of awareness in the present moment as the experience is unfolding. And it's kind of crazy because we usually miss the experience because our mind is habitually pulled into our thoughts, our programming, the conditioning from our history, our beliefs, our backstory. We've talked about this, so we're always distracted by the thoughts of the past or the thoughts of the future. And if I'm focused on the past, I'm really, referring to memories. And when I'm thinking about the future, it's really about fantasy. So it's no surprise that we miss this present moment experience so often. So let's bring ourselves back to the practice that we started, back to the breath, the air entering and leaving the nose, feeling the sensations between the nostrils and the upper lip, and then gently moving our attention to the torso and noticing as we breathe, noticing the movement of the body, maybe very slight, but especially around the chest and the abdomen. Just feeling the breath, feeling our body's response to the breath, breathing and noticing the in-breath and the out-breath, and the sensations in the trunk of our body. And just let it be easy.
So, if the programming which runs our thoughts, feelings, and behavior are attached to the past and future, this would imply that we're dominated by factors that may not be accurate or may no longer be useful.
Well, that's right, Anna. And the choices that are being made are really through a habit formation. This is the conditioning, and it's not always conscious. So the mind is dominated very often by misinterpretations of obsolete information, obsolete material regarding people, places, and things, and the material used for our daily interpretations, are often based on that backstory that we've talked about, our early socialization, the early conditioning, early beliefs and values, and I'm not saying that it's all bad or it's all wrong. It's just that we're unaware of it, so it tends to be unconscious and unexamined. And in mindfulness, in the mindfulness practice, I'm consciously choosing to disengage from the habit form, from that conditioning, and consciously choosing to engage in forms of thoughts and feelings and behaviors that serve my best self, that serve my best and highest self, and quite frankly, the best and greater good of all. So this relies on the practice of mindfulness, the experience of mindfulness. We don't want to solely focus on the descriptions and the definitions of mindfulness. It's the experiential reality, as I've said. It doesn't rely on cognitive and conceptual skills. There's no way to kind of get it without experiencing it. So it's about practice and practice and practice. So let's just return to our breath. Notice how it's moving on its own. It doesn't need us to do the job, the in-breath and the out-breath, and the response of our bodies. And notice how the thoughts may want to wander. Just kind of noticing how maybe we're feeling bored with just breathing, or we'd like to plan the day or the grocery list, or maybe continue that disagreement that we had with someone yesterday. This is what we call autopilot thinking. And I very often use the analogy that this is like a train that runs 24/7. The mind is always in activity and usually dragging us down the track with it. But notice the thoughts, and then notice how you can move away from the thoughts and return to the breath, the in-breath and the out-breath, and your body's response to it.
This is a critical point, noticing the autopilot thinking and recognizing the train that does, runs 24/7.
It is, Anna, but for reasons that sometimes aren't obvious. Because by cultivating a practice of observing like this, being mindful of our thoughts without engaging in our thoughts, we can experience this whole phenomena of being aware without being engaged. And this is something that only our species that we know of has the ability to do, to be aware of what I'm aware of. We refer to this part of our consciousness as the observer self. This part, as the observer self, is the witness or the watcher. We're consciously observing, consciously maneuvering ourselves in positions where we can observe very mindfully what is happening as it's happening. So I'm seeing and I'm hearing what's occurring in the moment without any judgment or criticism. And as we continue to observe the thoughts in this way, we begin to experience ourselves as being separate from our thoughts. I'm not my thoughts. My thoughts are mental events that are passing through my consciousness, passing through my awareness, kind of like clouds, are a weather front, kind of moving through. And we can learn a lot about ourselves merely by this practice, merely by looking at what's happening. Could be positive thoughts, could be negative thought patterns, emotional triggers, or even moods that we can begin to observe what's happening as it's happening.
So watching the thoughts is crucial. Dr. Jane, can you speak more about how the observer self shines the light on emotions and moods?
Oh, sure, Anna. Emotions and moods are really bundles. They're bundles of thoughts and feelings and body sensations and impulses. And there's an incredible ongoing kind of an interplay of these aspects. Thoughts can trigger feelings and impulses, and vice versa. And then there's the body. The body believes everything we think and feel, so it can go into reactivity, really in a heartbeat. In fact, the body is often reacting to an internal awareness of what's happening before it even registers as a clear thought or feeling. And these bundles are always playing out in the mind, always playing out in that train that runs 24/7, but very often below my conscious awareness. So the more I'm tuned into these in a non-judgmental observer kind of self-mindfulness practice, the more capable I am of teasing out really what's what. I can be kinder. I can be more gentle with myself as I begin to see my reactivity, and accept my conditioned patterns. It's like, oh, that's what that is, Jane, And so often it wasn't our fault. I mean, the conditioning wasn't our fault. We really learned how to do things before we could discern what was going to work in the long run. My mindful awareness sets me up to make conscious choices, to change those habit forms, to change that conditioning, maybe correct patterns that no longer serve me or the greater good. So let's move back to the practice, Anna. Taking our attention to the breath, noticing how our minds may get distracted, start to wander, coming back to the breath. And now in the practice, what we want to do is we want to turn our attention to experience sensations in the body. And what we're going to do is we're going to scan the body, doing it more quickly during this particular practice than we might otherwise, but nonetheless, experiencing different regions of the body, getting reacquainted with our physical self, feeling the sensations, attuned to our bodies in a very befriending way, and noticing the messages that arise from the sensations. So just allow the breath to move easily, the in-breath and the out-breath. And we start the scan by moving to the bottoms of our feet and just feeling the sensations to the bottoms of our feet. The tops of our feet. Feeling the sensations around our ankles. And then from our ankles to our knees, that lower part of the leg. Noticing sensations from the knee to the hips. You might notice that sensations are on the surface, or maybe they're internal sensations. And just allowing ourselves to have the sensations as they arise. And now from our hips to our shoulders, noticing all sides of the torso. And our shoulders to our fingertips. Just feeling the sensations. Full expanse of our arms and our hands. And now taking our attention to the neck. Noticing how it's balancing the head. And allow attention to move to all sides of the head. The back of the head, the sides, the face. All the way up to the top of the head. Nice, easy breathing. And just allowing the sensations to show themselves to us. And in doing this, we really welcome the body as a vessel of awareness, because I become keenly aware of the sensations of my entire body as I'm breathing.
It's amazing how the observer self becomes more skilled at identifying, what's going on, and the bundles become more and more transparent.
Yes, and the ability to discern what's happening allows us to work with our backstory, work with all that past conditioning. We can cease, fueling the reactivity of old wounds, old unresolved issues that we have from the past. And this works in tandem. The mindfulness works in tandem with our neural system, with the brain, with the neural pathways to help us self-regulate so that we can choose, by practicing, we can choose to calm ourselves. We can choose to soothe ourselves. And in making those choices, we rewire the brain, through the mindful awareness that allows us conscious choice.
So, Dr. Jane, you're saying that we can actually self-regulate and rewire the brain through these simple practices?
Well, Anna, that's exactly what we can do, and it's simple, straightforward. We're wired for it. We have the equipment for it. But it's not easy. We're in the midst of a self-regulating practice right now. As we go to our breath and we go to our body and our sensations, the mindfulness is really observing the breath. It's observing the autopilot thoughts. It's really sensing into the body. And all of this takes us away from the fray of the mind, that whirling, as you called it earlier, and really our physiology begins to settle fairly quickly, because we're not feeding and fueling the reactivity. So the fear networks of the brain and the neural system no longer are being fueled or fed information, that we're in imminent danger, that somehow this needs to be triggered in a way that we need to protect ourselves.
So if I remember correctly, the sounds we focus on mimic our thoughts, correct?
That's right. That's right. And we're going to move into that in this part of our practice. So let's go to our breath. Let the in-breath and the out-breath be exactly the way they are. Letting ourselves scan our bodies from the bottoms of our feet to the tops of our feet, of our legs. Into our torso, shoulders to fingertips, our neck and our head, all sides of our head. And now noticing sounds. Let the sounds come from all sides, above us and below us, in front of us and back of us. Notice the quality of sounds, the loudness, the pitch, the tone, the cadence. Notice how our thoughts may want to jump in and label the sounds or weave a story about the sounds. And just notice the thoughts and then come back to the sounds. Just breathing and taking in the sounds. And now allowing the sounds to fade. Just kind of let them fade away. And notice the thoughts that arise. And do your best not to linger on any particular thought or attach to any thought. Just allow them to pass, kind of like clouds across the sky. And this is where, as you said, Anna, this is where sounds really mimic the thoughts. Because the sounds appear spontaneously, seemingly out of nowhere, like the thoughts. We're not in control of them. We're not in control of the sounds. And to a large extent, I'm not in control of what sounds show up. I am in control of what I do next. And so I can determine whether or not I want to focus on the thoughts or if I want to step back from the thoughts. And this choice is how we rewire the brain. Because in our mindful observation of the thoughts, I can be pulled into the reactivity, or I can choose from my awareness that there's another choice. That maybe moving into my breath or another kind of quieting technique, that I can redirect my awareness through my mindfulness. And this redirection is what allows me to fire the neurons in a different direction or rewire the brain. So let's just be in the experience and aware of the thoughts, noticing that you can see the thoughts, hear the thoughts, feel the thoughts, experience the thoughts, but we're not on the train. We know it's there, but we're not on the train.
So this is like stringing the pearls of mindfulness practice. There's always something so calming and grounding for me as each pearl settles in. My body knows exactly what to do.
That's right. That's right. And sometimes our thoughts want to hijack us. Sometimes they want to really pull us down the track. And it's up to us, to notice what is happening in that moment and determine and discern what needs to happen. But this is the beauty of the practice, Anna, that the body does know the process. The body does know the sequence. And the more I practice, the less time it takes in just going to my breath and feeling that kindness and compassion, the less time it takes to move into that other flow, away from the reactivity, away from the negativity. However, there are times that the thoughts and feelings are intense and difficult. And so in these times, it's important to understand that we can move toward the discomfort, and we can learn and actually extract some things that may be necessary for us to change in our lives. And so it's really about being aware of and moving toward that information, even though it feels uncomfortable, even though I really don't want to go there, even though I have a whole habit form that takes me away. But the mindful awareness will assist us in being with it, being with the discomfort, and also guide us to more conscious and constructive choices. So let's just allow ourselves to be with the thoughts as they're arising. No judgment or criticism. Might be aware of something that feels uneasy or difficult, and just allowing ourselves to be with that. Feeling how maybe we want to, feeling how it kind of want to pull us into the story, and just staying with our breath, staying in our sensing of the bodies. And rather than analyzing it, just notice where it's being registered in my full body. Very often there's a tightness to the chest or the throat, or things are happening in my stomach. And just noticing what's happening in the body as we're thinking about this unsettling, maybe difficult situation or thought process. And we can also say to ourselves, it's okay. This is okay that I'm turning toward this. This is okay that I'm with this right now. It's uncomfortable. I don't necessarily like it, but it's okay. We're not trying to solve the problem, okay? We're really looking to be with it so that it can move through us. So that I can help, just by staying with it, I can help kind of dissipate the reactivity, turn off the fear networks in my brain and neurosystem, and begin to access that thinking brain, that problem-solving brain, that when it's calm and it's online, can really assist me in making right action, putting that plan together to take that right action through conscious choice.
Yes, there's such a pull to problem solve when you're in reactivity. And yet it's clear to me that our best efforts aren't helpful when we're all fired up like that.
No, Anna, it isn't. And so often it doesn't take very long to settle in. If you have a regular practice, what happens is that I can, within a few breaths, begin to settle in, turn toward whatever is happening, and really begin to discern what I need to do next. But there are times when we feel trapped in our reactivity, when, our automatic thoughts and our feelings and all of that old conditioning, it's really running the show. And at times like this, we may need a little bit more of something to reduce the painful engagement. Sometimes we really feel stuck in it and overwhelmed by what we're experiencing. And in those times when we feel that kind of stuckness, and we're in what I call negative bias, where everything seems so negative, I can't seem to extract myself from it. The practice that I suggest that's the add-on to this mindfulness practice that we've already begun here is the loving kindness practice. We can keep it short. It can be very, very simple. It always starts with ourselves, and then we extend it outwardly to the people that we're having a difficult time with, out to the world. So it's always a good idea that we start exactly the way we've been practicing. We start with a breath, let it be easy. I feel the contact in my body to the floor. I feel the sensations in my feet, my legs, my torso, my arms, up into my neck and head. I notice my thoughts. I settle into exactly where I am with my breath and the sensations. And then I move into the loving kindness. And the loving kindness is very, very simple. What we're doing is we're taking the phrases in as I say them, or as you would silently say them to yourself. You're taking the phrases in and dropping them, like a pebble into a deep well, just letting them sink deeply within us. And it can start with something as simple as, may I be at peace. May my heart be open. May I know the beauty of my best and highest self. May I serve the greater good. And then extending it to loved ones. May they be at peace. May their hearts be open. May they know the beauty of their best and highest selves. May they serve the greater good. And then to people that we're finding difficult, or maybe we're in reaction to, may they be at peace. May their hearts be open. May they know the beauty of their best and highest self. May they serve the greater good. And then out to the world. And this includes us as well. May we all be at peace. May our hearts be open. May we all know the beauty of our best and highest selves. May we serve the greater good.
This is such a beautiful piece and so much needed right now. So mindfulness really follows the awareness and track that we have talked about in earlier conversations as well, and applies it to life, everyday life situations, I would say.
That's a nice summary, Anna. We really make our awareness with mindful intention. We really put that together. The mindful intention to apply it in all phases of our life. And this takes us off the autopilot thinking, moves us out of that unconscious habit formation, that has been dictating our thoughts and feelings and behavior, and allows us conscious choice to really direct our lives from this higher place rather than from obsolete conditioning and that old backstory.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Jane, I love how you weave mindfulness right into our conversation. This is a great example of how once we become familiar with the practice, you can incorporate it in our everyday lives and activities. Thank you so much. Now we are all ready to get off autopilot and allow conscious choice to direct our lives. Until our next conversation.
Thank you, Anna.